The next few weeks became a dance of hidden glances and lingering touches. Emma found herself choosing her gym clothes more carefully, opting for colors that made her eyes stand out and fits that highlighted the results of her hard work with Jack. Thursday evenings turned into the highlight of Emma's week. Jack had moved their sessions to the last slot of the day, and Emma often found herself alone with him in the quieter gym. The way his eyes followed her movements made her skin feel warm even in the air-conditioned space. "You're getting stronger," Jack said one evening as Emma completed her final set of deadlifts. "Let's try something new today." He led her to a section of the gym she hadn't used before, with resistance bands hanging from the ceiling. Standing behind her, Jack guided her arms into the correct position, his chest pressing lightly against her back. Emma could feel the steady beating of his heart. "Like this?" she asked, her voice softer than she intended. "Perfect," he whispered near her ear, his breath warm on her neck. "Now pull down and hold." Emma followed his instructions, aware of every point where their bodies connected. When she finished the set, neither of them moved away immediately. "You smell nice," Jack said, finally stepping back. "Not many people smell nice after a workout." Emma laughed, turning to face him. "Are you saying I don't sweat?" "Oh, you definitely sweat." His eyes traveled over her flushed face and damp hairline. "It just suits you." The comment stayed with Emma as she showered in the gym's locker room after their session. She took longer than usual, letting the hot water ease her tired muscles and trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. When she emerged, dressed in jeans and a soft blue sweater, she was surprised to find Jack waiting in the lobby, also freshly showered and changed into casual clothes. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, a hint of nervousness in his usually confident voice. "There's a good place for protein bowls around the corner." Emma hesitated. This was crossing a line they had been dancing around for weeks. "Is that allowed? You and a client?" Jack ran a hand through his damp hair. "Technically, you're right. There are rules." He paused. "But I can't stop thinking about you, Emma, not just during our sessions." The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. "I can't stop thinking about you either." They walked to the restaurant in a charged silence, close enough that their hands brushed occasionally. The place was small and cozy, with low lighting and private booths. Their conversation flowed easily, moving beyond fitness to their lives, dreams, and pasts. "I was engaged once," Emma admitted, twirling her fork in her food. "He left 6 months before the wedding, said he wasn't ready." Jack's eyes were warm with understanding, his loss. "What about you?" Emma asked. "No girlfriend waiting at home." Jack shook his head. "I was with someone for 3 years. She wanted me to take a corporate job, wear a suit, said training people was beneath me." "That's ridiculous," Emma said, surprised by the flash of anger she felt at this unknown woman. "You're amazing at what you do. You change people's lives." "You mean that, don't you?" Jack said, studying her face. "Of course I do." Their eyes held, and Emma felt something shift between them again. Jack reached across the table, his fingers brushing her hand. His touch sent warmth spreading up her arm. "I shouldn't be doing this," he said softly. "But I can't help it." Emma turned her hand over, letting their palms meet. "Then don't help it." The walk back to the parking lot was filled with anticipation. They stopped beside Emma's car, standing closer than necessary in the empty space. "I had a good time," Emma said, looking up at him. Jack nodded, his eyes dropping to her lips then back to her eyes. "Me too." He took a step closer. "Emma, I—" She didn't let him finish, rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. Jack froze for a second before his arms came around her, pulling her against him as the kiss deepened. His body was solid and warm, just as she had imagined it would be. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing harder. Jack rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you walked into the gym," he confessed. Emma smiled, her hand still resting on his chest. "What took you so long?" "Professional ethics," he said with a small laugh. "Though they're not doing much good right now." Emma reached up and touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "What happens now?" Jack caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "Now we figure it out, together." The promise in his eyes made her heart race. "But first, I want to see you again." Outside the gym, their first real date happened on a Saturday. Jack had texted Emma asking if she would like to try a new hiking trail with him. "It's beautiful this time of year," he wrote. "Plus, I promise not to make you do burpees along the way." Emma had laughed at his message. She felt like a teenager again, checking her phone every few minutes for his texts. She spent more time than she wanted to admit picking out the right outfit, something that looked casual but still showed off the results of her hard work at the gym. The trail was outside the city, and Jack picked her up in his truck. When Emma opened her front door, she was struck again by how attractive he was in simple jeans and a fitted t-shirt. The professional distance of the gym was gone completely. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes taking her in. Emma blushed. "It's just hiking clothes." "It's not the clothes," Jack said, taking her hand as they walked to his truck. The drive was comfortable, with easy conversation and shared music tastes. Emma felt herself relaxing into this new dynamic between them. Jack's hand rested on her knee as he drove, his thumb making small circles that sent waves of warmth through her body. The hiking trail was as beautiful as he'd have promised, winding through woods and opening to stunning views of the valley below. Jack clearly knew the area well, pointing out hidden spots and telling stories about previous hikes. "I come here to think," he said as they reached a clearing with a view that took Emma's breath away. "When the gym gets too noisy or life gets complicated." "And what do you think about?" Emma asked, looking at his profile against the blue sky. Jack turned to her with a smile. "Lately, you." He spread out a small blanket he had brought in his backpack, and they sat close together, sharing water and the trail mix Emma had made. The conversation flowed from light topics to deeper ones, their childhoods, their fears, their dreams. "I've never told anyone that before," Jack admitted after sharing a story about his difficult relationship with his father. "It's easy to talk to you." Emma leaned against him, feeling his arm wrap around her shoulders. "It's easy with you too." The kiss this time was slower, more deliberate than their first. Jack's hand cradled her face, his thumb stroking her cheek as his lips moved against hers. Emma felt herself melting into him, her hands finding their way under his t-shirt to the warm skin beneath. When they pulled apart, Jack's eyes were darker. "We should probably head back before I forget we're in a public park," he said, his voice rough. The tension between them built during the hike back, their hands rarely leaving each other. By the time they reached his truck, Emma could feel her heart racing with anticipation. Jack pressed her gently against the passenger door, his body close to hers. "Come back to my place?" he asked, his lips inches from hers. Emma nodded, unable to find words for how much she wanted this. Jack's apartment was exactly what Emma had expected, neat but lived in, with minimal furniture and fitness equipment in one corner. But she barely had time to look around before Jack's arms were around her again, his kiss more urgent now that they were alone. They moved together toward his bedroom, shedding layers as they went. Emma's shirt, then Jack's. His hands were warm on her skin, gentle but confident as they explored. When her back hit the mattress, Jack paused, looking down at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're sure about this?" he asked. Emma reached up to pull him down to her. "I've never been more sure of anything." What happened next was everything Emma had imagined during their training sessions and more. Jack's body was strong but gentle, his touch exactly where she needed it. He seemed to read her perfectly, knowing when to be soft and when to be firm. "You're amazing," he whispered against her skin, his lips tracing patterns down her body that made her arch toward him. Emma lost herself in the sensations, in the way their bodies moved together as perfectly as if they had been doing this for years instead of hours. Jack whispered her name like a prayer as they found their rhythm together. After, they lay tangled in his sheets, his arm around her and her head on his chest. The steady beat of his heart under her ear was comforting in a way Emma hadn't expected. "Was that just because I'm your trainer?" Jack asked suddenly, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. Emma raised her head to look at him surprised. "What do you mean?" "Some people have a thing for their trainers. The power dynamic, the physical aspect." His eyes were serious. "I need to know this is real for you too." Emma touched his face, feeling the slight stubble under her fingertips. "This has nothing to do with you being my trainer. This is about you, Jack. Just you." 2 weeks passed in a blissful blur. Emma and Jack spent every free moment together, balancing their time between his apartment and hers. At the gym, they maintained a professional distance, though Emma caught the secret smiles Jack sent her way when no one was looking. On a warm Tuesday evening, Emma arrived at the gym for her regular session to find Jack talking to the manager Lisa. Their conversation looked serious, and Jack's usual easy smile was missing. "Everything okay?" Emma asked as she approached, trying to keep her voice casual. Jack nodded, but the tension in his shoulders told a different story. "Let's get started with your workout." Throughout the session, Emma could tell something was bothering him. His instructions were perfect as always, but the playful banter was missing. When they finished the cool-down stretches, Emma couldn't wait any longer. "Are you going to tell me what's wrong?" she asked, keeping her voice low. Jack glanced around the gym before meeting her eyes. "Lisa heard rumors about us. She reminded me about the gym's policy on trainer-client relationships." Emma's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means I could lose my job," Jack said, running a hand through his hair. "Or you need to switch trainers." The thought of working with anyone else made Emma's chest tighten. "I'll switch trainers then." Jack shook his head. "That's not the point, Emma. I've worked here for 5 years. My reputation is important, if word gets around that I date clients." "So what are you saying?" Emma asked, suddenly afraid of his answer. Jack looked at her, his eyes conflicted. "I need to think. Can we talk later? Come by my place after closing?" The hours until the gym closed crawled by. Emma tried to distract herself with work, but her mind kept returning to Jack's troubled expression. When she finally arrived at his apartment, she was a bundle of nerves. Jack opened the door wearing sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, his hair damp from a shower. The familiar sight of him made Emma's heart ache with how much she'd come to care for him in such a short time. "I've been thinking," Jack said as they sat on his couch, "and I have a proposition for you." Emma braced herself, afraid he was going to end things. "What if," Jack continued, taking her hand, "I train you for free, outside the gym? We can use the park, my apartment, your place. That way, you're not my client at the gym anymore, but you still get your training." Relief flooded through Emma. "You want to keep training me?" Jack laughed, pulling her closer. Among other things. Their kiss was hungry, filled with the tension of the day. Emma found herself straddling his lap, his hands warm under her shirt as they moved across her back. "I was so afraid you were going to end this," she admitted between kisses. Jack pulled back to look at her, his eyes serious. "No chance. I'm in too deep already." They made love right there on the couch, urgent and passionate. Afterward, as they caught their breath, Jack's phone buzzed with a text. He reached for it, reading the message with a puzzled expression. "What is it?" Emma asked, still curled against his side. "It's my friend Mark. He's asking if I want to help with a project this weekend." Jack sat up straighter, suddenly excited. "Actually, this could be perfect." "What kind of project?" Emma asked, curious about his sudden enthusiasm. Jack showed her pictures on his phone of a small garden plot on the edge of town. "Mark runs this community garden project. He teaches kids about growing food and donates vegetables to the local food bank." Emma looked at the pictures, seeing the neat rows of plants and smiling children. "It's beautiful. I help out sometimes, building things, heavy lifting." Jack looked at her, his eyes bright. "You should come with me. I'd love for you to see it." The invitation felt significant, like Jack was sharing an important part of himself. "I'd love that," Emma said. Jack grinned, pulling her closer again. "It's a date then, Saturday morning." His hand slid up her thigh. "But first, I think we need to make up for lost time." Later, as they lay in his bed, Emma's head on his chest, Jack traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "You know what's strange?" he said softly. "What?" Emma asked, her eyes closed in contentment. "I've dated plenty of women, but I've never brought any of them to the garden." His voice was thoughtful. "It's like I didn't want to share that part of myself. But with you, I want to share everything." Emma raised her head to look at him, touched by his words. "Thank you for trusting me." Jack's eyes held hers, serious and tender. "There's something about you, Emma, something I've never felt before." Their kiss was soft, a gentle promise of something deeper growing between them. Emma felt a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with the way Jack was looking at her. Saturday morning arrived with golden sunshine streaming through Jack's bedroom windows. Emma woke first, watching Jack's peaceful face as he slept. She still couldn't believe how quickly her life had changed since walking into that gym. Jack had become the center of her world in just a few short weeks. She slipped out of bed, borrowing one of his t-shirts that hung to mid-thigh. In his kitchen, she found coffee and started making breakfast. The domesticity of the moment wasn't lost on her, how comfortable she felt in his space, as if she belonged there. Strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind, and Jack's lips found the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder. "Good morning," he murmured against her skin. "This is a nice sight to wake up to." Emma leaned back against his bare chest, enjoying the solid warmth of him. "I thought you might be hungry before our big gardening adventure." Jack turned her around in his arms, his eyes dark with desire as they traveled down her body, taking in her bare legs and his shirt draped over her curves. "I'm hungry, but not for food." The breakfast was forgotten as he lifted her onto the counter, stepping between her legs. His hands slid under the t-shirt, finding her skin hot beneath his touch. Emma pulled him closer, wrapping her legs around his waist. "We're going to be late to the garden," she whispered, even as her fingers tangled in his hair. Jack smiled against her lips. "Mark is used to me being late." His hands found the hem of the shirt, lifting it slowly. "Besides, I've been dreaming about you in my kitchen since our first date." Their lovemaking was slow and sweet, the morning light painting their skin golden as they moved together. Afterward, as they shared the slightly burned toast and cold coffee, Emma felt a happiness she hadn't experienced in years. They arrived at the community garden just before noon. The space was larger than Emma had expected, with neat rows of vegetables, a small greenhouse, and a central area with picnic tables where a few people were already working. "Jack," a tall man with a beard waved them over. "Thought you might have forgotten us." Jack grinned, his arm around Emma's waist. "Mark, this is Emma." "Emma, this is Mark, the mastermind behind all this." Emma shook Mark's hand, noticing the way his eyes moved between her and Jack with obvious curiosity. "So you're the reason this guy's been walking around with his head in the clouds," Mark said with a friendly smile. "Nice to meet you." Emma felt herself blushing. "It's wonderful to meet you too. Jack's told me so much about this place." Mark raised his eyebrows at Jack. "Has he now? That's a first." He gestured around the garden. "Well, welcome to our little oasis. We're building some new raised beds today if you're up for getting your hands dirty." The next few hours flew by as Emma and Jack worked side by side. Jack showed her how to construct the wooden frames for the raised beds, his hands guiding hers on the tools. Emma was surprised by how much she enjoyed the physical work, the feeling of creating something useful with her hands. She watched Jack interact with the volunteers, especially the teenagers who clearly looked up to him. He was patient and encouraging, showing them how to use tools properly and praising their efforts. This was a side of Jack she hadn't seen before, the mentor, the community leader. It made her heart swell with pride and something deeper she wasn't ready to name yet. During a break, they sat at one of the picnic tables, drinking water and eating sandwiches someone had brought. Emma noticed an older woman watching them from the greenhouse. "Who's that?" Emma asked, nodding discreetly toward the woman. Jack followed her gaze and smiled. "That's Mrs. Rodriguez. She's been here since the beginning, knows more about growing things than all of us combined." As if hearing her name, Mrs. Rodriguez made her way over to their table. Her face was lined with wrinkles that spoke of years in the sun, but her eyes were sharp and assessing as they landed on Emma. "So you're Jack's new girl," she said without preamble, sitting down across from them. "This is Emma," Jack said, his hand finding Emma's under the table and squeezing gently. Mrs. Rodriguez studied Emma for a long moment. "You two look good together." She turned to Jack. "This one's different from your usual type." Jack laughed, but Emma could see a hint of embarrassment in his eyes. "Mrs. Rodriguez believes she can read people." The older woman snorted. "I've been right about every girlfriend you've brought here." She paused, her eyes twinkling. "Oh wait, you've never brought anyone here before." Emma felt a warm glow spread through her chest at this confirmation of what Jack had told her. They stayed at the garden until sunset, working alongside the other volunteers. Emma found herself drawn into the community, enjoying the easy camaraderie and shared purpose. By the time they loaded tools into Jack's truck, her muscles ached pleasantly from the work, reminding her of their gym sessions. "You fit in well here," Jack said as they drove back toward the city. The evening light painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, casting a warm glow over his profile. Everyone liked you. Emma smiled, feeling a deep contentment. I liked them too, especially Mrs. Rodriguez. Jack laughed, reaching for her hand across the console. She doesn't usually warm up to people so quickly. Consider yourself special. I'm starting to, Emma said softly. The look Jack gave her was so intense that Emma felt her breath catch. There was something unspoken growing between them, something that felt both thrilling and terrifying in its potential. They stopped at a small restaurant for dinner, sitting close in a corner booth as they shared a bottle of wine and plates of pasta. Under the table, Jack's leg pressed against hers, his hand occasionally finding her knee or thigh in casual touches that sent warmth spreading through her body. Stay with me again tonight? Jack asked as they walked to his truck, his arm around her shoulders. Emma leaned into him. I didn't bring a change of clothes. Jack's smile was mischievous as he opened the truck door for her. You won't need them. The drive to his apartment was charged with anticipation. They barely made it through his front door before Jack was pressing Emma against the wall, his mouth hungry on hers. Their clothes formed a trail to his bedroom, her jacket by the door, his shirt in the hallway, her dress at the foot of his bed. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, Jack looked at Emma with undisguised desire. You're so beautiful, he said, his voice rough. His hands traced the curves of her body as if memorizing her. Emma pulled him closer, needing to feel his skin against hers. Their bodies found each other with the familiar rhythm they had established over the past weeks, but tonight felt different. There was an added intensity, a deeper connection that went beyond the physical. Jack moved slowly, his eyes never leaving hers as they came together. Emma felt herself opening to him completely, not just her body but something deeper, parts of herself she had kept guarded even in her previous relationships. Jack, she whispered against his lips, unable to find words for what she was feeling. He seemed to understand, his movements becoming more urgent as he whispered her name like a prayer. When they finally fell over the edge together, Emma felt tears prick her eyes at the overwhelming intensity of their connection. Afterward, they lay tangled together, neither speaking as their breathing slowly returned to normal. Jack's fingers traced lazy patterns on her back, and Emma rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I think I'm falling in love with you, Jack said suddenly, his voice quiet in the darkness. Emma raised her head to look at him, her heart hammering. In his eyes, she saw vulnerability and hope, mirroring her own feelings. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she admitted, the words both frightening and freeing. Jack's smile was brilliant as he pulled her closer for a tender kiss. That's good, because I have plans for us. What kind of plans? Emma asked, settling back against his chest. Remember how I told you I'm only at the gym part-time? Jack's hand continued its gentle path up and down her spine. The rest of the time, I've been working on something. Emma propped herself up on one elbow, curious. What is it? I've been developing a community wellness program, Jack explained, his eyes lighting up with passion, something that combines fitness with nutrition education, focused on underserved communities. The garden is part of it. That sounds amazing, Emma said, truly impressed. Jack nodded, his expression serious. I've been working on the business plan for over a year. I just secured some grant funding to launch a pilot program. Jack, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Emma leaned down to kiss him, proud of this man who continued to surprise her. There's more, he said when they pulled apart. The program needs someone to handle marketing, community outreach, getting the word out. His eyes met hers. Your background in marketing would be perfect. Emma felt a surge of excitement. Are you offering me a job? Jack laughed, pulling her fully on top of him. I'm offering you a partnership, in every sense of the word. His expression grew serious again. I know it's fast, and maybe I'm crazy for even suggesting it, but when something feels this right. Emma silenced him with a kiss. It does feel right. 3 months passed in a blur of activity. Emma had given notice at her marketing job to join Jack's wellness project full-time. They had thrown themselves into the work, securing a small office space near the garden and developing programs that combined fitness, nutrition, and community engagement. On a crisp autumn morning, Emma stood in the community center they had renovated, watching as people filtered in for the grand opening. Colorful posters she had designed covered the walls, showcasing their programs and the smiling faces of community members. Nervous? Jack asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Emma leaned back against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. A little. What if nobody shows up? Jack kissed the top of her head. Look around. They're already here. He was right. The center was filling with people, families with children, elderly couples, teenagers from the neighborhood. Mark was setting up a table with produce from the garden, and Mrs. Rodriguez was arranging potted herbs she had grown for people to take home. I can't believe we did this, Emma said, turning in Jack's arms to face him. We did it together, Jack corrected, his eyes warm with pride, just like everything else. Their relationship had deepened alongside their work. Emma had moved into Jack's apartment a month ago, the transition feeling as natural as breathing. They had fallen into an easy domesticity, their lives intertwining in ways that felt both exciting and comfortable. The sound of someone tapping a microphone drew their attention. Mark stood at the front of the room, grinning as he called for everyone's attention. Welcome to the first official day of Roots and Movement Wellness Center, he announced. I'd like to introduce the two people who made this possible, Jack and Emma. The crowd applauded as Jack took Emma's hand and led her to the front. Emma felt a surge of emotion as she looked out at the faces of people who had become like family over the past months. Thank you all for coming, Jack said into the microphone. This center belongs to all of us. It's about building stronger bodies, yes, but also a stronger community. He passed the microphone to Emma, who felt a momentary flash of nervousness before speaking from her heart. 3 months ago, I was just someone looking to get in shape after a breakup, she said with a smile. I never imagined walking into that gym would change my entire life. She glanced at Jack, who was watching her with love in his eyes. But the most beautiful things happen when we least expect them. The day was busy with activities, fitness demonstrations, cooking classes, nutrition workshops. Emma moved through the crowd, answering questions and helping where needed. Her heart swelled with pride every time she caught sight of Jack working with a group, his passion for helping others shining through. As evening approached and the crowd thinned, Emma slipped out the back door for a moment of quiet. The garden looked beautiful in the golden hour light, the raised beds they had built now full of fall vegetables. She sat on a bench, taking a deep breath of the cool air. There you are, Jack's voice came from behind her. I've been looking for you. Emma smiled as he sat beside her, their shoulders touching. Just needed a moment to take it all in. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. It's been quite a day. Quite a 3 months, Emma corrected, leaning her head on his shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the light change over the garden. Then Jack shifted, turning to face her. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket. I was going to wait, but this moment feels right. Emma's heart began to race as Jack pulled out a small velvet box. He slid from the bench onto one knee in front of her, his eyes serious and full of love. Emma, he began, his voice slightly unsteady. When you walked into my gym that first day, I had no idea you were walking into my heart too. He opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. These past months have been the happiest of my life. You've become my partner in every way, in work, in dreams, in life. I want to be your partner forever. He took a deep breath. Will you marry me? Emma felt tears filling her eyes as joy surged through her body. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, Jack. Of course, yes. His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms for a deep kiss. Emma melted against him, feeling as though her heart might burst with happiness. I love you, she murmured against his lips. I love you too, Jack replied, holding her close. More than I ever thought possible. Later that night, as they celebrated in the privacy of their home, their bodies moving together with practiced passion, Emma thought about the journey that had brought them here. From client and trainer to lovers to partners to fiancés, each step had felt both surprising and inevitable. As they lay tangled together afterward, Jack traced the ring on her finger. So, he said with a teasing smile, do you think we shocked everyone? Emma laughed, remembering the title she had once jokingly suggested for their story. What my trainer and I did after the gym definitely shocked me, she said, kissing him softly. But in the best possible way.